Well, I think I was around 13 years old, and it's ironic. My uncle, I used to get in a lot of trouble, and my uncle was a very prominent figure in my life, and he told me, I know you got a bunch of leadership skills. When you going to start using them for something positive? And that has stuck with me all my life since then, and around 13 years old. Well, a lot of times at West High School and dealing with issues that we had in the 60s and the 70s, there was a lot of racial turmoil in there. They would call you to the office, and there was an issue that happened at Westmore, and some individuals were caught bringing things to school, and I wasn't involved in it, but they called me to the office anyway, and they knew if I wasn't there, I knew about it, and that was it was a good experience because it taught me how to deal with authority figures and not be intimidated by them, because they were trying to blame me and put me into this act of violence. It was, and it wasn't me. So, but I was able to navigate through the system, and just taught me that. It's my mother. I was brought up. My mother and father got divorced when when I was 8 years old. My father left, and my mother held it all together. She worked hard. Sometimes 2 jobs. It was a very challenging situation. And my mother worked so hard, she died at a young age of 52. And I believe that was a lot of stress, but we never went without. And we never had any lights turned off. We always had food on the table, money and a little bit of money in our pockets, so what we needed to do. But she made us get out there and work too. So that was, she's my hero. A disciplinarian. My mother was a disciplinarian. You had jobs to do in the house. You had to come home with good grades and do what you had to do, or you got disciplined. So she was old school.
What did your mother do during the day for a living?
My mother worked for the state of Ohio.
What was your father's name?
Bryon Potts.
Can you describe a little bit about your father?
My father was a highly intelligent person. He got all A's all through school. Never got anything lower than all A's. But he had one thing in wood shop. He couldn't do things with his hands. He was an intellectual. My father was a person that was ahead of his time. He was born too early. And simple, mundane things couldn't hold his interest. He was too smart. Sometimes you can be too smart.
For the time.
Right. And it just bored him. So just kept being involved in different things and ended up just couldn't be disciplined. And it's ironic that my father was an undisciplined person, and how disciplined my mother was. And you talk about opposites right there. So, but that's my father, very intellectual.
Did you have siblings?
I do. I'm the youngest of 4. I have an older sister, and I have 2 brothers. But I'm the youngest. Save the best for last.
That's for the siblings.
I tell them that all the time. My favorite hobby is just to go out and be a community servant, and go out and I do a lot of activities in the community, and I don't want any money or compensation in any way. I just love doing it. So, and I come from a generation, my uncle, my grandmother were community people, and this is what I grew up seeing. They were my examples, and it's just something that I love to do. That I'm nicer than they think. Everybody thinks I'm real mean, but really, my wife would say I'm a pushover, but I care a lot. Probably Jerry Watson, and he's doing great things in the community too with his basketball program. He has one of the leading basketball programs in the nation, and has had a lot of people that played for him gone pro, probably over 10 to 15 young men that have played in his program. You probably sing. I sing in the choir, and I sing with my fraternity choir. We sang as youngsters. We tried to be the Jackson 5 back in the day. Mint chocolate chip. Well, my favorite quote is something that I made up. It's dare to be great. When I go out and talk to these young people and challenge them about daring to be great. And my fraternity brothers, they know I say it all the time. I challenge you, because it's okay to be great. And we have come in our community, especially with these young people, it's like you're selling out when you want to do great things. And you want to get good grades, and you want to do things that are positive, that you're a sellout. But I dare them to be great. And that's my quote that I made up. There's a blessing in the giving. When you always be a giver. Now, because I watch people, and I watch who's always taking and never giving. But I believe that we have an obligation, especially I'm a Christian, and I believe that we have a duty to give. And I believe there's a blessing in the giving. The first thing I would change here is this divisiveness in this world now, this country. If you look at it, our country is polarized now. We have conservatives on this side, and we have so-called liberals on one side, and it's a further divide. What we need to do, we have to do this together. And if we don't, we'll be just like those great nations that have failed. All these great nations, Roman Empire. Watch what happens here. And that we're losing our grip in being the greatest nation in the world, because of the divisiveness. So if I was president, I would try to bridge that gap, because we are totally polarized now. A superpower would be to grant people wishes. If I could grant you a wish and help you in any way along the way, that superpower would be to help you. Because if you see, it's a common thread through what I believe, that we have an obligation to help people and to give and to bless others. So that's what that would be my superpower. I'll grant you a wish. What would it be? I hope you would use it for good. I don't know, that's a hard one right there, but probably would be easier to see what is really in my heart, because a lot of people think I'm standoffish and mean, but that's what I would probably do. That I'm a fighter and I'm a giver. I'm an advocate for people. I'm a born advocate for people. And that's what I love about it. It's natural. Well, we have a very close group of siblings. We are close. So we grew up in a house. We bought a house. My mother and father bought a house, built a house actually on Oakley. We still own the house on Oakley. So the three brothers stayed in one room, and my sister had her own room, and my mother and father had their room. So it was a very small house. Now that I look at it now compared to when I was growing up, I didn't think it was small, but very close-knit household. I grew up on the Hilltop. I'm a third-generation Hilltopper. And when the Hilltop, at that time, everybody knew everybody. My pastor lived down the street on Oakley. We had lawyers that lived in there. We had doctors. We had police officers. And they would discipline you. They knew you. They knew your family. Everybody knew the people up there. So there were homeowners. And at that time, the Hilltop was like a suburb. It was different. Because my mother grew up on the east side, and it was, that's where most of the African Americans lived, on the east side. So when my family came here, my grandmother and my great-grandmother moved from Virginia here. And they were one of the first African Americans on the Hilltop. So they're 2 generations ahead of me. Actually 3 generations ahead of me if you count my great-grandmother. They weren't born here, but they migrated from Virginia here. And when they came here, they acquired land. My great-grandmother and grandfather had an issue because my uncles, great-uncles, and my grandmother then weren't able to go to school. And they said, well, we have to go somewhere where my children can go to school, because they valued education. My grandmother ended up being one of the first African Americans to graduate from Ohio State. And we have a Harvard lawyer that is in that generation. Actually, when I went to college, there were so many of us, they were first generation college people. But I'm third generation college people. My grandmother, PhD. My uncles all went to Ohio State. They all went there. One went to Harvard Law School, like I said. So I grew up with people that valued education. It's not whether you're going to college, it's where you're going to college in our family. It's no option here. You're going somewhere. I went to Highland Elementary School, Westmore Junior High School. It's called Westmore Middle School now, and West High School. And actually, my grandmother went to West High School. My father went to West High School. I went to West High School. We have others, cousins that we have about 5 generations of graduates that went to West High School. It's very important. One of my strongest mentors is Jacob Ashburn. He's my pastor, and he took me under his wing. He said, well, I guess he was smart enough. He knew how bad I was, so he hired me at the J. Ashburn Youth Center. When they first started the J. Ashburn Youth Center, he hired me as a youth leader. And I still go to Oakley Baptist Church. And I grew up in Oakley Baptist Church. And people in there were instrumental in helping me and pushing me and guiding me as much as stuff that I did. They really stayed focused with me, and my pastor, and he was very instrumental in the religious part. Everybody went to church, some church growing up. I don't know too many people that didn't go. It's different now, but and they were prominent in the Hilltop area. My first job was at the J. Ashburn Center, and I ended up being a board member, from a youth leader to a board member. And basically what he did is paid me to play, so taking care of me. So we would be there. I'd help clean up, do that kind of stuff. But my summer job and my job, it was actually year-round, was at the Ashburn Center. And you have to, Pastor Ashburn had so much vision and how important it was to mold a child instead of repairing an adult. That's what his model was. You mold and shape the child so you don't have to repair him as an adult. So he saw what needed to be done. That's why he created the Ashburn Center. Up on the Ohio State campus. She's a graduate of Ohio State. I'm in Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, and we were having a party, and she came through the door, and I grabbed her hand. I was working the door, so and started messing with her and chased her ever since.
How long have y'all been married?
We've been married 33 years.
And how many children do you have?
With her, I have one son.
You have other children?
I do.
How many children do you have?
3.
Okay.
Greatest hardship as a father, not being able to raise my sons, the 2 older sons that I have, because couldn't get along with the mother. Now we did, being a part-time parent instead of being able to impart my wisdom and things to my son, just not on a full-time basis. So it's different when you're there every day with a child than you are on your parenting time. I think my greatest accomplishment is accepting Jesus Christ. I got all these accolades. I got 3 degrees and doctorate degree and all that. It doesn't mean anything.